Paging Dr. Metzger. Come in, Phil Metzger. Ah, there he is. Okay. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. Yeah. You had me worried there, but we're here. Yay. Phil Metzger's joining us. Richard Cimino's joining us, too. We are here on Pastor's Perspective on this Tuesday afternoon, the last day of the month, and we are ready to answer your questions about the Bible, the Christian faith, just about anything that's on your mind. Grab an open line. 888-564-6173 is our number. Phil Metzger is the senior pastor at Calvary San Diego, and Richard is one of the assistant pastors here at Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa, which is where the radio station is. So welcome, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Hi, guys.
See you.
Yeah. What is new? You guys are preparing each... I know, Phil, we talked recently. What time are your services for this weekend for anyone down in the San Diego area? Or, hey, they might be listening in Van Nuys, and they're like, hey, let's spend the weekend in San Diego.
Hey, you've made a worse decision than to spend the weekend in San Diego, that's for sure. Yeah, Good Friday, 6:30 p.m., and then Easter morning at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. at calvarysd.com. You can get our address and all that fun stuff.
Yay. And what's going on here at Calvary Costa Mesa, Richard?
We are having Good Friday services at noon on Friday and 6:30 on Friday evening. Then we're having a sunrise service at 6 and in the morning, and then our regular 8:30 and 11 gatherings.
Nice. On Sunday.
And they will be different than the sunrise service.
The message.
Yeah, the message will be... There'll be the sunrise message, and the other two will be different messages. And,
yeah.
We're really excited about all the content for this.
Yeah.
We're really excited.
Sounds great. So you can find out details, address, etc. at cccm.com. Programming note here for K-Wave this Friday, Good Friday. Pastor's Perspective will not be live. What we're going to do is we're going to air the 12 noon Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa service at 3 o'clock in place of Pastor's Perspective. So if you can't make it out to a Good Friday service, you can hear one here at 3 o'clock. But we really do encourage you to get out at 1. You can even go to Calvary Costa Mesa at noon and then drive down to San Diego and be there with Phil Metzger at 6:30. I mean, that sounds like a great idea.
That sounds brilliant.
Yes, I agree. 888-564-6173 is the number to call us today here on Pastor's Perspective. You can also send in your questions online through the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page, using Messenger. You type us a message there, send it in. Any questions that you send us online, though, may be edited for either clarity or whatever the case might be. So keep that in mind. We also don't guarantee answers to questions that you send in online. We're not going to do an online back and forth. You ask us a question, we don't have the manpower to do that. But the nature is you send in your questions online. If we read them here on the radio show, then we'll send you a message saying, hey, we read your question and gave you an answer on the March 31st episode, that kind of thing. So Pastor's Perspective Facebook Messenger, or you can DM us on the Pastor's Perspective Instagram. You can also scan the QR code if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. That will take you to the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. where you can fill out the form, and that'll get your question to us as well. And that's what Shelley did. She's in Charlestown, New Hampshire. And she writes, my mother-in-law got a copy of the Ethiopian Bible from someone and thinks it's the best because she said it has all the books and none have been taken out. Can you please give me a way to explain to her why these are the true books and are the inspired word of God? Shelley means the 66 books that we have in the Bible, not the extra ones that might be in the Ethiopian Bible. Shelley goes on, my mother-in-law comes from a Catholic upbringing but had a bad experience with it. She will talk about God, how he is with us all, but she's very into the earth, sky, crystals, and those kinds of things. So I know she's being deceived, and I want her to be saved and know the truth. I speak to her about Jesus and really want her to know why she should read only the Christian Bible. I'm not up on what the Ethiopian Bible is, so I would like some enlightenment from you on it, as I'm not good with the history of the book. So Phil, what would you say to Shelley?
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute there. Well, I would. Okay, the Ethiopian Bible there are similarities to kind of like the idea of a Catholic Bible, in that there are different books than maybe what we have in our well today I'll say Protestant Bible. But I would also kind of caution Shelley from this idea that it's like all evil and wrong and bad. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible is not this isn't a different religion. I think they count 81 books. I was trying to confirm that versus our 66. So they do have other books that they're adding into that, that we do not believe are canonical. One of those that's like a very popular one is the Book of Enoch. And that gets brought up here all the time. People like, hey, Book of Enoch, Book of Enoch, Book of Enoch. So if you want to get into, there's a discussion, and we've had it many times on why are the books of the Bible in the Protestant Bible, why are they in and not others? And that's a broad scholarly a total academic, field that discusses that and why. And there's books that we always recommend to people if you're interested in that. But in the end, the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible has books that we believe are not canonical in the same way. They don't hold up to the same criteria and standards as do the 66 books that we have in the Protestant Bible. But we don't believe that makes the Ethiopian Orthodox Church evil or bad or wrong, or that, there's a gospel that's being preached of Jesus. I wouldn't disassociate or say no, you can't be in that movement and not be a Christian.
Right. And something I wanted to clear up as I was reading Shelley's question, the way I read something might make it seem, let me just find it here. Shelley says, my mother-in-law will talk about how God is with us, but she's very into the earth, sky, crystals, those kinds of things. She's not doing that because of what she reads in the Ethiopian Bible. I mean, I've never read the Ethiopian Bible, but I'm pretty sure it's not talking about the earth and sky and crystals and things like that. So this must be something that Shelley's mother-in-law does even whenever, all the time, or some of the time, but she's also now reading this Ethiopian Bible, which could be a good thing that she's at least starting to read it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting though how and it's probably a social media thing where people have been kind of in particular, the algorithm of your social media has kind of been pushing the Book of Enoch on a lot of people. And, if you're spiritual, so the things that you just read, Brian, that makes sense. You're into kind of spiritual things, and it wouldn't surprise me that would get kind of pushed towards you. And, the Bible's been withholding information about Jesus that you can get from the Book of Enoch. And I mean, again, I don't think I need to do it on this show, and I'm certainly not the scholar that could do that, but let me just make it really clear. It has been over and over and over proven to be this is not canonical. It is not historically accurate. It's not theologically accurate. It wasn't even written by Enoch. I mean, that's how bad it is, right? So it's just taking on his name. Super interesting as just purely reading, but to make it on the same par as Scripture would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, Richard?
Yeah, and there is one other thing about the Ethiopian church that is not I don't think it's if it's a deal breaker in terms of their confession, and it's the way they understand the nature of Jesus. They fully affirm that he's divine. They fully affirm that he's human, but they think that he has one nature. Those two distinctions are rolled into one. Whereas in the Council of Chalcedon, they were really careful to say we don't want to mix up. We don't deny the deity of Jesus, nor do we deny the humanity of Jesus. We just understand them, those elements of his nature, distinct from one another, and it's kind of like you could say it's kind of like a family disagreement. They're not denying that it's a language thing that you can kind of maybe get lost in the weeds in. So that's the only other thing that I saw looking at this subject matter. So.
All right. Shelley, thank you so much for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. And here's another one that was sent in the same way. This one is from Anna in Kenya, who listens to us on kwave.com. Thank you, Anna, for sending in your question, which is on Philippians 3, verses 10 and 11. Anna says, when Paul writes in verse 11, if by any means I may attain to the resurrection from the dead, why would the resurrection of the body matter to him if, when he dies, he goes to be with the Lord immediately? Paul seems to talk a lot about resurrection. Please help me understand. Richard, what do you say to Anna?
Well, resurrection's a really big deal. And here's how I would like to go into this. Why would the resurrection of the body matter? In 2 Corinthians 5, verses 1 through 3, Paul says, and I'm going to read from the New Living Translation, we know that when this earthly tent we live in is taken down, that is, when we die and leave this earthly body, we will have a house in heaven, an eternal body made for us by God himself and not by human hands. We grow weary in our present bodies, and we long to put on our heavenly bodies like new clothing. For, here's the key, we will put on heavenly bodies. We will not be spirits without bodies. And I know there's a lot of, even in conservative Christian circles, there's a lot of de-emphasizing of humanity and an overemphasizing of the spiritual realities that we read about in the Bible, to the exclusion of the fact that God made us humans. And so the core idea, it's kind of like there's this Gnostic dualism that was really, very prevalent in the New Testament time. And the core idea is that the body is inferior, it's corrupt, it's evil, but the spirit, the immaterial stuff, that's the good, pure stuff. The body's unimportant. In fact, the body's a prison, and what really matters is the spiritual stuff. And I think that directly contradicts what the Bible says about the goodness of God in physical creation, the goodness of the human body, the unity of body and soul, the fact that, creation is good. God saw everything that he made, including the man and the woman, and said, this is good. It's very good. The material world wasn't evil. It was created good. And God's going to renew it. He's going to make it all new. The incarnation, Jesus, the Word became flesh. Jesus didn't escape the body. Like the Gnostics said, well, Jesus wasn't really, he couldn't have been really a man and been God because the body's evil. Right? So, but incarnation affirms the body. The Word became flesh. He took on a real human body, and salvation includes the body. The redemption of our bodies in Romans 8 and in 1 Corinthians 15, a bodily resurrection. The resurrection of the body, the renewal of the body. We are going to have bodies that are fit for forever in a new heaven and a new earth.
Mm-hmm. Phil?
Love that. Just love pondering that. I love this week. We get to talk about resurrection all week long.
Yes.
Well, we could talk about it all the time, but it's exciting when it's the week of.
Isn't it funny, too, when it comes to like music? We can sing Easter music all year long, but Christmas music, they say, nope, that's only for December. So
it's true.
Just a little side note from me. But go ahead,
That's
Phil.
a good point.
Sorry to interrupt.
And really,
we need to sing Joy to the World all the time.
Yeah, but I have friends that want Christmas music in like July, and it's like, that's wrong. It's like psychotic. And you shouldn't do that. So so if you're listening and you're one of those friends, you heard me say it out loud. Okay.
Yes.
But come on, give us the body stuff now. Get to the
What'd you say,
resurrection of the
Richard?
body. I got to hear your take on this, man.
Yeah, well, because so I'm kind of thinking about the question. I'm kind of rereading it too. Why would the resurrection of the body matter? And I totally agree with you, Richard. But I also want to kind of, if I could, just point out that in Philippians here, when Paul's writing about attaining to the resurrection from the dead, he's not specifically focusing on just the body. He's talking about the concept of resurrection, that like when just resurrection at all. That like death is not the end, be it physical, be it spiritual. He's saying like, I want to live in such a way that when I die, I am a partaker of like the joyful resurrection from the dead, right? That I'm going to be with the Lord forever. So yeah, I do believe in bodily resurrection. And I think you just answered that very well. But I'm even thinking the bigger context of Philippians 3, especially those verses, isn't as much about just a body alone, but just the concept of like that my life in Christ is a promissory of like, I'm going to be raised with Christ. He was the first one to be risen, and I will be raised with him in resurrection.
Anna, thank you so much for sending in your question. Did you want to?
Yeah, I like that old saying, as the head goes, so goes the body. You know, Christ was raised, and we will be raised with him.
Mm-hmm. Anna, thanks for sending in your question. Thanks for listening to us online in Kenya on kwave.com. That is so awesome.
That is so cool.
Yes. These wonders of modern technology never cease to amaze me. Let's do one more that was submitted online before we go to the phones at 888-564-6173. Ronald, you'll be first up, but here is Daniel's question. He's in Orange, California. He writes, "Hi, pastors. I'm a Christian, but lately when I pray, I feel like I'm just talking to myself with my eyes closed without any connection. How could I pray and be closer to God?" Phil, what would you suggest for Daniel?
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I think a lot of people face that, that feeling. I would, boy, to just try to give some advice, but then I feel like questions like this, there's always like deeper, like kind of underlying things going on, right, that we don't know about. So I would say too, I guess just to kind of caveat the whole thing, Daniel, is to say like things that to me are like kind of like gimmies that need to be happening is, are you in regular fellowship? Are you placing yourself under the teaching of the Word of God at a church and in connection with other believers? I know that's not the question that you're asking, but it is relevant to you growing. That you're positioning yourself. The posture of your life is that you're in a position for growing. You're in the Word. You've got people in your life. Those things I have found make a huge impact on my capacity for prayer. Like truly. Because I find that like left to myself too long, you think of like entropy, just a lot, like the idea that things aren't getting better left alone. And so I truly believe that like the fellowship of believers and community is sharpening my Christian walk with Jesus in such a way that then prayer becomes real. It becomes like when I'm in a community of believers and I'm hearing how God's answering their prayers, now I'm not feeling jealous. I'm actually like, okay, I believe God will do that in my life too. So that's just my caveat to the whole thing. I'll hand it over to Richard in a second. One last thing I would say is this, man, is like, don't let the emotion that you're not feeling impact your capacity to just be faithful and obedient in speaking to the Lord. He is not silent. God is real. He is alive. He is speaking. We might need to learn how to pray, right? And there's another part of community that's so critical. If all you're doing is a list of like, well, I need this and this and this and this, yeah, maybe God sounds silent. How do we change our prayer life so that we're actually giving God space for us to listen to Him? But Richard, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's so also good, because I was just thinking, like you read in the book of Acts when the church gathered to pray, it's like, could you imagine like being in the middle of those moments and how you would have been, no matter how your day was rolling out in the first century, you're with the people of God, and you just begin to sense how real the gift of salvation is and our relationship with Jesus is. So I double down on the community part. It's really big. But also, I just want to tell you, you're not alone when you feel that way. There's a lot of times when I close my eyes and pray, and I don't feel nothing but me being antsy in a chair. I don't always feel God when I pray, but thank God that prayer is not about what we feel. We can have magnificent moments and deeply moving moments in prayer, but I also know that we can have times when we just feel like there is no connection between us and God, and that's where it's so important that Paul says, "This life I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God who gave himself for me." I'm believing that he is who he says he is and that he's done for me what he said he did, and that doesn't change no matter how I feel. If I feel a million miles away from him, the Bible says that we were once far from him, but now we're brought near by the blood of Jesus. Feelings don't mitigate against that reality of intimacy with our King and our Redeemer. And so you pray in faith. It's not just, I believe God can do this. It's, I believe God is who he is. I believe that it says the Lord hears when I call to him. I believe that's the truth because God said that. Mm-hmm. And so because he said that, regardless of how I feel, I'm going to call out to him. And, I think of David, Psalm 40, I waited patiently. I cried to the Lord. I waited patiently. So it would appear that it seemed like God wasn't listening to him for a long time.
Yeah.
But he says, but God inclined to me, and he lifted me up out of that horrible pit, and he set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. Mm-hmm. And so there's just times when, Lord, I wish I knew that you were hearing me and answering me right now. You must not be hearing me if you're not answering me. So again, I really want to encourage you. We must. The just shall live by faith. The Christian life begins with by faith. It's lived by faith, and it is concluded in faith. So,
yeah. The thing about that passage too, Psalm 40, I waited patiently for the Lord. We have no idea how long he had been waiting, or how much longer it was before he got his answer, or if he ever got his answer. But so. Hang in there.
Right? Because the fact that he had to wait patiently tells you it had been a while, because most of us just wait. and then we have to wait patiently. It's like, ooh, that must have been a doozy.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's a good point.
And we're like the most impatient society because we want everything quick. So back then things were slower paced. So it might have even been longer, but he's still stuck with it. So Daniel, thanks for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. Thank you so much for listening and watching the show today. It is sponsored by the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. Join pastors and church leaders from across the country for a time of renewal and encouragement this May. Anchored is a conference hosted by Talbot School of Theology focused on hope-filled faith and thoughtful engagement with today's world. You can learn more at biola.edu/anchored Kwave. This is a live show. I didn't have time to pre-record that commercial, so sorry, Biola, if you're listening. Of course, they're really listening today. Ed Stetzer is supposed to be here tomorrow, so I will make sure to rehearse that so that I don't flub up. All right, 888-564-6173. Janet, we're going to talk to you after we speak with Ronald in Rialto. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Ronald.
Yes, pastors. I was looking for scriptures that you could recommend for the Holy Week leading up to the Resurrection Sunday.
Like for what kind of setting? Just for like your own personal Bible study, or what's going on?
Yeah. I was just reading some scriptures, and I was just trying to follow the weekly, what happened during the week to lead up to Resurrection Sunday.
Got it.
Is there anything like that I could reference?
What would you guys suggest?
Yes. Well, if you really want to get down into the heat of the moment, you can start in John chapter 13, and just you could spend this whole week looking at the last hours that Jesus had with the disciples. So much pouring out, so much into their hearts and lives. So much about revealing the heart of God, the humility of God, the creator of all things, the sustainer of all things, stooping, getting up and getting on his hands and knees and washing feet that would run away from him. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to wash the dirt off the feet that will desert me in my darkest hour. I'll even wash the feet of the guy who's going to go out and betray me into the hands of the people who are going to murder me.
Yeah.
So much stuff. The Garden of Gethsemane. There's just those hours leading up to his death on the cross. Pick any part of any of the Gospels in the last week leading up to the death of Jesus. It's great stuff.
Phil?
Yeah, I mean, that's great stuff. I'll just give you like passages if you want to write them down, if you just want to look at from the beginning of Holy Week, generally speaking. Matthew, start in chapter 26. You could go a little bit earlier if you want, but certainly from 26, 27, 28, you're going to get to read about kind of the events of Holy Week. In Mark, you could start in, Mark, let's say, I could say chapter 14 and work your way forward. And so Mark 14 all the way to the end of the book, and you'll be covering that. And then in Luke, you could do basically the same thing. Let's see here. I'll just have you start in Luke 22 and work your way through. And they're each about 2-3 chapters, maybe 4. And you can do the same with John. I think you said John 13, right? Is like, that's
if you really want to get into it.
John 13 gives us a much more elongated version of the Holy Week than we get in the Synoptic Gospels, for sure. But there's your Synoptics and the Gospel of John. Read away. You got a lot of reading to do now. It's good.
What do you think, Ronald?
Thank you, Pastor. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome very much.
Thank you for calling in today to Pastor's Perspective at 888-564-6173. Now we'll go to Janet in Nebraska. Hi there, Janet. How are you listening to Pastor's Perspective today?
Today, I listen to you guys through almost all your apps.
Cool.
But so probably I guess the K-Wave app, my husband's probably listening to me now upstairs. So I have ADHD. So if you need to rein in the conversation, please do. I don't mind. So I have a question. Our pastor was out, this Sunday, and there was an elder teaching, and I hate to bring the conversation back to the Ethiopian Bible, but he really felt on his heart that God was speaking to him, and he started talking about the book of Enoch. And going to Calvary Chapel and, with Chuck Smith and everything, and I understand that those books are we're supposed to look at them as maybe history type books or not inspired. But this person was kind of, I think he was hinting towards that the book of Enoch was inspired by God. And it kind of brought some concern. And I don't know why I feel like some concern in my heart. And I was wanting to call you guys, but then I didn't. And then when that first caller called in, or did they call right in? I can't remember. But so I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with this question.
No, that's interesting that you were like, should I call? And then somebody else sends in a question and you're like, oh man, this is a sign.
Lord, I'm calling. And I feel so sorry for the lovely lady that answered the phone. I do apologize because she worded it a lot better than I can.
No, I think you did a good job. Yeah. Phil, what would you say to Janet?
Yeah, it's great, Janet. It's a great question. Good and it's great for conversation. I can't really speak too much to. I mean, I can't speak anything to the elder that was teaching. But again, going back to the book of Enoch, I want to kind of maybe flesh this out a little bit more, because in the book of Jude, verses 14 and 15, and this is in the canon of scriptures, right? The Bible that you have in front of you, that I have in front of me, Jude, verses 14 and 15. Are referencing the book of Enoch. And of course, this is part of what makes a lot of people say, well, see, there it is. It just got excluded, but there it is. It's right there in Jude 14 and 15. And our quick answer to that is going to be this. Just because a book is being used as a source does not make it canonical. It doesn't mean the whole book is inspired by God. It's simply that the Holy Spirit pulls, uses Jude to grab that particular part from Enoch. But the book itself, again, there's a criteria, and it just doesn't match the criteria. This would have been a part of the Old Testament, right? The Old Testament, not the New Testament, and it doesn't match Old Testament canonical criteria, nor does it match New Testament. Jesus doesn't ever quote from this. This is written over a span of time. It is certainly not written during the days of Enoch. The book of Enoch is written closer into the second or third or first century BC. It is not even close to the dating of the life of Enoch. So it is using a pseudonym to try to gain credibility. And it's interesting. I wouldn't even say it is totally historical because we don't know if everything can be proven historically, but be that as it may, it may very well be. But just because Jude quotes it doesn't mean the whole book is canonical.
Yeah. Paul quotes the authors and writers of his day.
Epimenides, yeah.
When he was on the Areopagus talking about the unknown God. And they don't get it. That doesn't make their writings canonical either.
Yeah, Janet, thanks for your... Go ahead, Phil. What? We got about 20
No, I was
seconds.
going to say that's from Epimenides. He was a kind of a Greek or kind of a pagan prophet, but he was not a Christian at all and didn't believe in God. So it was just a quote.
I guess another question, one I have, is if Janet's pastor comes back this week, does she tell him, hey, while you were out, Elder so-and-so taught, and he mentioned that the book of Enoch is inspired by God? I'll see what Phil and Richard think when we come back on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173. I'm always trying to cause trouble. We're back on Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. Faithful engagement starts with thoughtful formation. Talbot Apologetics forms Christians who reason clearly and communicate with grace in a complex world. Truth with clarity, engagement with compassion. Discover more at biola.edu/apologetics-kwave. 888-564-6173 is the number to call us today. We're going to be in the studio for another 25 minutes or so. I'm Brian Perez here with Richard Cimino, one of the assistant pastors at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and Phil Metzger, the senior pastor of Calvary San Diego. And right before the break, we were speaking to Janet in Nebraska, who says that there was a guest pastor, one of the elders at the church. He spoke this past Sunday, and he mentioned that the book of Enoch was inspired by God. So we talked about the book of Enoch for a few minutes, but now the question I want to know is, Should Janet and her husband maybe mention to the senior pastor when he comes back, hey, do you want to know what he said? I mean, the guy probably has, they probably record their messages and it's on YouTube and everything.
Before he's going to get back.
Yeah. He probably got phone calls while he was on vacation.
Or he was listening online.
Yeah, could be. No. Could be. But yeah, what do we do at that point? Phil, what do you say?
I would tell her, listen, I'd go talk to the guy that said it, not to the pastor. It's, things can be misunderstood. If he's not the regular teacher, boy, unless you get up and teach, you don't realize how easy it is to say something you didn't exactly mean it that way. It's so easy to do that. And then, I didn't mean to say that. So I think it's worthwhile to just, kind of without a combativeness in it, just to say, hey, you said that you mentioned this. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Is that what you meant to say?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's like your conversations with your wife. I've been told one of the safest and best ways to communicate with your wife is to actually say, so you're saying, and then you say what she said. And I've done that with my wife. She goes, that is not at all what I said.
Oh, man.
No, I'm sure no husband's ever run into that.
Never had that happen.
Never. So this is more like a Matthew 18 moment, would you say, to where she doesn't directly go to the pastor and say something, but more of a one-on-one kind of thing?
I'd say it's even less than a Matthew 18, because that implies kind of like a conflict where this is more like a, did I hear you right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if I did hear you right, could you explain that to me? And then maybe it becomes a more Matthew 18-ish, and that you're like, well, maybe I don't know how great I feel about that. And I would, listen, if I were talking to that person and they said, no, I totally believe the book of Enoch is inspired by God, I'd be like, gosh, I might mention this to the pastor. I'm just curious his perspective on that. I would be upfront about that so that it doesn't seem like I'm trying to go behind anybody's backs.
Yeah. Janet, thank you so much for your phone call today here on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173. That's our number. Can't wait to talk to you. Here's another question that was submitted online. This one is from Ashley, who sent this to us on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page using Messenger. She is in Nevada, and she writes, good afternoon. I've always heard or thought that Jesus descended into Abraham's bosom after his death to release those who were waiting for his redemption. I guess I took it for granted that this was scriptural, but I recently questioned it and went searching and couldn't find definitive evidence. I found verses like 1 Peter 3:19 and 20 and Matthew 12:40, but those seemed more interpretive than I'd previously assumed. And the verse to the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in paradise, suggests that he went straight to the Father. Can you tell me if this idea is biblical? Is it controversial? Or is it just a misinterpretation that has gone around? Richard, what do you say to Ashley?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. And I'm really interested to hear what you have to say on it, Phil. But sometimes I think maybe the more appropriate question is, what is paradise, as opposed to where paradise is. Paradise, the what of it would appear to be the presence of God, where believers would go after dying, but in as of right now, not yet in the final resurrection state. There's some place where when everything's going to be culminated, where people are, but they don't yet have their glorified bodies, but they're in the presence of God. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, Abraham's bosom could have been that, but enjoying the presence of God, but not in the final state. But I don't know. I've never really thought it was something to get really deep into. I don't know. Phil, you?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of that, like, you kind of like, you're around Christianity a while. I'm thinking when I first got saved, and you hear these things and you go, oh yeah, it's biblical. But then you start reading and studying, and then now you're teaching it, and you say, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd make a strong case that when Jesus died, he went to Abraham's bosom, and that I can prove that. There's certainly, like, you're taking like a few passages. I think it's Luke 16, Luke 23, Acts 2, and and then some people use Ephesians 4, which I don't believe should be applied to that. But I think it's Yeah, I think people try to use those passages to say, yeah, Jesus obviously went down and he preached, to those, who were captives in the lower parts of the earth, and then he ascended. I see Ephesians 4, 8, 9, and 10 more to be speaking about the overall picture of Jesus descending to the earth and preaching the gospel, and then going back to the Father. Not that it's a case study that proves that he went into the
Lower parts of the earth,
the actual physical earth. I think time is the issue that we get caught up in. That well, Jesus had to do that before he could do this. Well, right there, that word "before he could do" is misguided. Once he's no longer, death freed him from time, right? His body died, but he's now no longer under the time constraints of. So, what does it mean that he went to Abraham's bosom? Was he there? Were they hanging out? Or was it all instantaneous and everybody's now up in heaven? That is a great question for heaven, but I'm not sure that the Bible just makes it crystal clear that we could prove that point one way or the other.
Yeah, the hope is not merely a place, it's a person.
Ashley, thank you so much for sending in your question through the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page using Messenger. Here's another one that was submitted online. It's from Eileen in Kingman, Arizona. She used the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com to submit her question. And you can do that too. Easiest way to do it is by scanning the QR code. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram right now, it'll take you right to that page. But Eileen writes, in reference to a question that was asked on March 10th, you guys remember the March 10th episode, right? A gentleman asked about when a Christian dies, does the spirit rise to the Lord or does it stay in a waiting area until Jesus comes? Which was explained to the caller. My question is, what about a body that has been cremated? Will that body be risen when the Lord raises the physical body? Now, this is a question that we do get often on the show here, but we also get new listeners all the time. We don't expect you guys. We would love it if you would listen 24/7, but we know you can't. But yeah. Richard, what do you say to Eileen?
Well, it might sound really simplistic, but cremation just speeds up the process that every body that's put in the ground comes to. So God's not limited to whether or not those pieces are in a little urn stuck someplace or whether they've been in a grave for centuries. Him raising bodies from the dead is not a problem. He's not going, okay, what part is this grain? What's this little bone here? And how does that bone connect? Where's the hip bone connected to the, which one is that? He's just gonna raise it. So is that even was that
I was going to say, I didn't know the hokey pokey was in the Bible, but some people say that it's in Ezekiel, the whole thing about the
dry bones.
Yeah, the dry bones. Yes, yes.
I'm just yes. I thought maybe that. I hope that's not irreverent. But
Phil, do you think that's irreverent?
No, I don't think it's irreverent. I think we used to have this. We used to say this a lot. You hear pastors say this a lot. If you can accept the first verse of the Bible, everything else becomes no big deal, right? If God created the heavens and the earth, then, if he is the creator of all mass, all material, all everything, then the idea that a body was cremated is of no power or material consequence to God. Yep. It's no more than if you were, he's not that bone is intact, I can work with that. If he can create from nothing, then he can also reanimate our bodies. It is of zero change to him.
Yeah, God's not going to, sorry, I didn't get all the pieces, but your glorified body's missing something. Right. Not going to happen. So, or
in the case of organ donation or something, if you died
whose kidney was that? No.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, some people might worry about that. Is it okay to donate my organs, or is that going to mix up God at the end? And but
and I'm a big believer in telling everybody, please donate your organs. You could save lives. And if you're but what about what about when I'm being raised from the dead? It's like, dude, the kidneys you currently have aren't going to be the ones that carry you through eternity anyways.
Yeah.
God is refitting us in such, you imagine a person going into space. They have to be refitted, right? They need a suit. And I'm not saying we're going to have some astronaut suit. I'm just simply making the point that this mortal will take on immortality. And that and the idea there is that like whatever I am now is going to be made for eternity then. So donate your kidneys and your heart and your lungs and let somebody else have a chance, because it could be an opportunity for them to hear the gospel.
Yeah.
You're giving somebody else a chance to keep living, and that could be a major impact on their eternity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who was that? That was Eileen's question, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
Eileen, thank you for writing your question in through the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. David in Winchester, listening on FM 107.9 K-Wave. Thank you for calling 888-564-6173. There's still time for you guys to call in with your questions. Just a few minutes left, about 12 minutes or so. But call in. David, hi, what's your question?
Yeah, it kind of fits in with what you're talking about, but in a different way. I'm an older person with a lot of challenges, but throughout my life, things have happened. People have passed, my brothers, my mom, my dad, all these people, and all these sorrows and tears. But in the kingdom of heaven, they say there are no more tears or sorrow. So do we go through like a lobotomy spiritually?
What do you think, Phil?
No, I don't. I understand though the reason you're saying that, and I get it. And so I'm not, me saying no isn't to minimize, but it's to say that like when we're in heaven with the Lord, there's so many factors that we can't even account for right now, because we don't see clearly. We don't know as we're known. We're so limited right now. So then we have to piece together what the Bible does tell us about heaven. And when the Bible is saying things like there's no more tears, that doesn't mean that we've been lobotomized. It's a phrase to help us to understand that we will be in alignment with the kingdom of heaven. God's justice will be ours. His righteousness, ours. His redemption and transformation of humanity is our view. Like, when it says that we will have no more tears, it doesn't mean you'll just be dried up, robotic, and uncaring. It means that you'll see things not just better, but you'll see things perfectly as God ordained them to be understood. So as it relates to like, when will I know that I don't have a family member? Tricky stuff. The Bible doesn't give us total clarity on that. And yet somehow we will exist in such a way where everything that God has done will make sense and it will be right. So yeah, Richard, you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think we have to try to get our heads around the picture in the book of Revelation where it says that God will be dwelling in the presence of his people. God's original intent has been his only intent ever. His people in his presence, in his place. And that's the story. That's the culmination of the story of God. It begins with that. It ends with that. And we can't begin to understand what it will be for us to actually live in the presence of God with all of his glory. And his glory is so profound, so majestic that there's no need for the sun anymore to light anything. It's just, the Lamb is the light there. Like what we have of him, there's no sorrow can't exist there. It can't be there. The things that would normally make us cry, the only thing I could think of is tears of joy, but apparently somehow in some way we'll have the capacity to have a joy that it transcends anything we can know right now. But to be in his presence where all things are new forever, that mitigates against the stuff that makes us cry. Like because it goes along when it says there's no more tears, because no more pain, there's no more sorrow, there's no more death.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of tears eliminated.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think, David?
I think yeah, just to be in his presence will probably be so overcoming with joy, happiness, and fulfillment and everything else that your mind, if there still be any of the earthly mind left that remembered all those things, would probably dissipate, and our mind would be so focused on what's ahead of us that we won't even begin to think what was behind us. That's probably it.
Very good. Oh, Phil, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's part of it. Yeah, that's really well said. And yeah, I mean, even the phrase, just to like kind of like flesh this out a little bit more, even the phrase like "there will be no more tears," like I think we even have to be a little bit careful to assume that just means like there's not crying, but it's like, what does it mean when he's talking about no more tears? Like, I know people that like they cry happy, like it's.
Yeah.
Are you saying they can't even happy cry anymore? It's like, no, I'm not sure that the Bible is telling us
exactly
there will be no liquid coming from people's eyes. It's just that the pain and sorrow of suffering will be eradicated forever.
Yep.
David, thanks for your phone call today here on Pastor's Perspective. Here's another question that was submitted online. It's from Lisa in Romoland, the land of Romo here in Southern California. Lisa writes, my husband and I were watching a news program, and a gentleman was validating through his research or existence of extraterrestrial beings here on Earth. Did God create demons, or were they fallen angels that evolved into demonic spirits? What say you, Phil Metzger?
Ooh, so fun. I love these ones. Did God create demons? He did not create demons, but he did create angels. And the Bible tells us that that Lucifer and his followers rebelled against God. They were cast from heaven. And these we call them demons. So they were not evolving in the sense of like they were, they were one way. I guess if you want to use that phrase, they had a choice. They made a choice. That choice determined their outcome forever. And there is a third of the angels that God created that are now demons that are following Lucifer. So, but in terms of aliens, I don't know, Richard, you want to talk about aliens? Go for it.
I think they're fun to talk about, but I don't want to talk about them now. I can't wait to see that Steven Spielberg movie that's coming up in the summer. Oh gosh, what's the name of it?
What is it? I love a good alien movie.
It's a one-word thing, the disclosure. And it's like the day when everybody's told we're not alone. Oh. It's really a fascinating subject to look at. But there's so much, everybody's got opinions about them, and I haven't got one that's settled at all.
I just found it. It's called Disclosure Day.
Disclosure Day.
It's coming up in June.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The trailers looked like, oh dear.
Huh. Now, recently, I mean, this has been in the news a while now, but we even got the Vice President of the United States saying that he says extraterrestrials are demons. That was his take. Here's the key points, according to Entertainment Weekly, their website, EW.com. J.D. Vance does not believe that ETs are aliens from outer space as traditionally imagined. He told a recent podcast, I don't think they're aliens. I think they are demons. And he's the latest politician to wade into little green man disclosure following Donald Trump's demand for the release of the so-called UFO files, and Barack Obama claiming that aliens are real, though he hasn't seen them. So this is just, could they, what? What do you think?
I think these are like, whether they're real or not, I honestly don't really know. I love the idea. I mean, I'm a product of ET, so I love the concept. I'm all in. There's theological issues to all that. I get it. I get all that. But what I find is I find this, the overall of it is such a big, like kind of a wag the tail, kind of a thing where it's like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. It's like, I'm more centered on like, we have real things that need
we should talk about, yeah.
resolution. And it's easy to be like, and I think, and I don't blame any president or any government official for doing it. It's a great way to divert. I totally get it. But I mean, like, if we've proven anything in like societies that we can't keep a secret. So if it was real, we'll be hearing about it. It'll come out. The idea that like thousands of people who have been a part of whatever areas or this or that, I think, there's a lot more out there than we realize, even in our own government and all that. But I think like, if it takes away from like the idea that like, or if it makes me see it in a spiritual way instead of like, gosh, I need Jesus, I need a God in my life, then I'm concerned about it. But it makes for fun kind of conversation for sure. It's interesting.
Richard, any thoughts?
Yes. There's a podcast called Rebuilders, and guy's last name is Sayers. He wrote a book called The Disappearing Church. Not as in the rapture, but it's a great read, The Disappearing Church. Really, really good. He's an Australian guy, and in one of his podcasts, he did a thing, says, what are we to do if we're suddenly told that aliens are real? Mm-hmm. And he just kind of walks through these things, and his thing is that when you mention that, suddenly all of a sudden all this news is coming out, and it's like a diversion, like from what things that really matter. And that was pretty much the tack that he took on it. And he says, investigate the people that are saying these things, and why would they need to be talking about those things at this moment. So it's quite interesting. It's
like the Roman Colosseum. It's like, let's put on entertainment games to, take away from the fact that our nation, our civilization is crumbling. Let's entertain you. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, I've heard that said too, that the more we tell people that there are aliens, and one day the rapture takes place and millions of Christians disappear, they'll just say, oh no, it wasn't Jesus, it wasn't the Christian rapture, it was just aliens that took them all up. Any validity to that, you think?
I mean, why not? I think every diversion you could possibly imagine is going to exist. Heck yeah, I would. If I were on their side, I would totally do that. Like, this is what happened and this, and, and we've got evidence of these things, and we can, yes, and yes.
So speaking of planets and things like that, is the Earth flat? That's a question that Jared sent in. I have a friend who is a pastor, and he recently shared his newfound belief that the Earth is flat.
Flat Earth pastor.
The flat Earth pastor. I don't believe the Earth is flat, says Jared. Can you please give your perspectives and maybe some Bible verses or informational links on your perspective? So what do you think? Flat Earth, yes or no?
Well, John Lennox addresses that in his book titled 7 Days That Divide the Earth. So you can go grab that book and check it out, and he talks about, the language used, the four corners of the earth. It blows my mind that anybody who's got up in an airplane and seen the curvature of the earth can come to the conclusion that it's a flat earth.
Why do they even, are there other verses that support, why would that even be a theory? Why are we, is this another diversion or what?
The pillars of the earth, et cetera, that language.
But it's a trip. My brother lives in Florida. It's a trip. How many of like the homeschool Christian organization has got into this? And you'll be getting emails. Sorry, but yeah, they've like really gotten into. He's like got so many of his friends that are like full on flat earthers, and you think we've never had more. Boy, if this doesn't prove that idea that like there'll be like a mass confusion in the last days, you'd think with all the information we have, we would be able to like knock that one out of the park. Like, dude, we've put people in space. We can prove that and yet the number of flat earthers has increased since the internet's been around, not decreased. It's a fascinating thing. I think it just shows like our brains are all a little like ADHD wired, and we're just constantly looking for things that make us go, what about that? What about that? What about that? And if I have a little knowledge that somebody else doesn't have, I'm all in. The Bible uses metaphorical language to describe the world that has absolutely nothing to do with it being flat.
Richard?
And I was going to say, and there you have it.
And there you have it. And that's the way it is. for this Tuesday, March 31st edition of Pastor's Perspective. God bless you guys. Thanks for listening today and watching. Phil Metzger and Richard Cimino, thank you for being on the show today. Continue to keep the Broderson family in your prayers, and we will talk to you tomorrow here on Pastor's Perspective.